This week's Reddit stories are something else. Let's not waste any time. Let's get into it. Okay, first one. So this person has two daughters. The older one, who I'll call Madison, dropped out of college a while back. She wasn't going to classes, her grades collapsed, and the university eventually kicked her out. She's been working as a waitress since then and doesn't have much money. The younger daughter, who I'll call Becky, is now graduating college, debt-free, she got a full ride, and just landed a job offer at a good company starting at solid money. Madison has, by the poster's account, become increasingly bitter about everything Becky achieves. Every milestone Becky hits seems to make Madison more resentful. Then one day, at a family gathering, Becky casually mentioned she was planning a trip to Iceland in the fall. On the car ride home, Madison went off, said it wasn't fair that Becky gets to do all this cool stuff, that she should be the one doing that since she's older. The poster had enough. He told Madison clearly that her jealousy needed to stop, and that the reason her life is the way it is right now is because of her own choices. They got into a real argument over it. Madison is furious. The poster's wife thinks he went too far and shouldn't have said it that way. Was he wrong for saying it? This is one where I can see the "you went too far" argument, but I also think there's a limit to how long you let something like this go on. Madison isn't just feeling privately sad, she's actively making family events about her resentment and insulting her sister over achievements that have nothing to do with her. There's a difference between supporting someone through a rough patch and watching them redirect blame indefinitely. He might have been blunt, but the reason your life is the way it is your own choices is a true statement. You can say true things imperfectly and still not be wrong for saying them. Next one. And this one is genuinely sad. So this person has been close friends with a guy, let's call him John, for over 15 years. They lived together at one point, considered each other basically brothers. John got into a relationship with a woman named Amy a few years ago. When John decided he wanted to marry her, he asked the poster to be one of his groomsmen. The poster was genuinely happy for him, said yes. One thing John mentioned was that he wished Amy and the poster got along better. Apparently, Amy had been saying the poster wasn't making enough effort with her. The poster was genuinely confused by this. He said that whenever they were all together, he always made sure to greet her, talk to her, include her in games and conversations, especially since she's naturally shy and reserved. He felt like he was usually the one initiating with her, not the other way around. Then their friend group of about 10 people organized an overnight getaway. The poster and his partner were the ones putting it together. They found a great Airbnb that everyone liked, except John and Amy took an unusually long time to confirm whether they were actually coming. By the time they finally responded and said yes, the original place had been taken by someone else. They found a smaller backup Airbnb. It was good, but smaller. It meant that not every couple would automatically have their own private room. The group has a long-standing tradition. They play drinking games when they arrive, and whoever wins gets first pick of the rooms. It sounds silly, but everyone in the group had always agreed it was a fair and fun system. The poster messaged John, asking if they were still in. John responded, saying Amy wasn't comfortable with the possibility of sharing a room with other people. The poster reminded him that everyone goes through the same process, it's fair to everyone, and it wouldn't make sense to make a special exception just for one couple. Then John replied with something that genuinely shocked the poster. Well, why don't you share your room with someone else so we can have it? The poster said no. That wasn't a fair thing to ask of him or anyone else. John and Amy decided not to come. After that, everything between them stopped. No messages, no invites, nothing. The poster only found out later that John and Amy had gotten married, a secret wedding with only her family and friends. None of John's longtime friends were invited. Not the poster, not the other groomsmen he'd asked, nobody. They now have a baby, and the poster doesn't know the child's name. He's getting married himself next year and genuinely doesn't know if he should even invite John. Was the poster wrong for not giving up his room? No, not even close. What John asked, give up your own room so we can have it, because we took too long to confirm and ended up at the smaller backup, is not a reasonable ask between friends of 15 years. It's actually a pretty telling ask. The poster had already been accommodating. He'd explained the system, he'd been open. The response was to ask him to personally sacrifice his own comfort to avoid an outcome John didn't like. What this reads like, stepping back, is that Amy wanted a guaranteed private room, and when that wasn't available, the friendship became expendable. A 15-year friendship, a groomsman invitation, a wedding, a baby, all of it went away over a room at an Airbnb weekend. That's not on the poster. Okay, this next one is kind of funny. So this couple, both 32, have been in their apartment for 4 years. They're both big horror fans and have been since before they moved in together. 2 years ago, they got an Art the Clown doormat. That's the scary clown from the Terrifier horror movies, from Spirit Halloween. They put it outside their apartment door. It's not a Halloween decoration that gets put up and taken down. It's just something they like and want there year-round. About a month ago, new neighbors moved in across the hall from them. They have 2 young kids, a baby and a child who looks to be about 3 or 4. When the couples first met while both bringing in groceries, the neighbor dad looked at the mat and made a joke about it still being Halloween. The poster laughed it off and they moved on. Since then, they've come home 4 times to find their doormat flipped over, face down. They have a Ring camera outside their door and the footage is clear. It's the neighbors doing it each time. The poster and his wife decided to just let it go for a while and flip it back each time, not wanting to create drama with new neighbors. Then they caught the neighbors in the act. They were right there in the hallway. The poster asked directly what the issue was. The neighbors explained their son was scared of it. But here's the thing. The son was standing right there in the hallway at that moment, and he was completely calm. Not crying, not upset, not reacting to the mat at all. The only person who seemed genuinely agitated was the mom, who swore at them, rolled her eyes, and was generally unpleasant. The dad, to his credit, seemed more reasonable. He said he understood it was their space, and he'd talk things over with his wife. The poster's wife waited until they were inside and flipped the mat back. Then the next morning, the mat wasn't there at all. It hadn't been flipped. It had been taken from outside their door and thrown out past the stairwell. They live on the 4th floor. Someone deliberately carried their property out and threw it. Were they wrong for keeping the doormat? No. It's their front door. It's a mat they've had for 2 years before anyone else moved in. It's on their own space. The child's reaction at the moment they were caught, completely calm, not upset at all, doesn't line up with the level of action being taken here. And throwing someone's property down from the 4th floor stairwell is not how reasonable people handle a doormat they don't like. Report it to management, keep the mat. All right, next one. So this woman has been a vegetarian for 8 years. She does it because she loves animals, not for health reasons or dietary trends. She used to love meat and says it was genuinely hard to give up at first, but she adjusted and has been fully consistent for nearly a decade. And importantly, she doesn't push it on anyone else. She doesn't lecture, doesn't judge what other people eat, and will happily cook and serve meat for her family and friends at events. She even bought a separate grill, specifically so nothing would cross-contaminate when she cooks for others. Her partner is vegan. He's described as being borderline annoying about it. He gets visibly upset when she cooks burgers for her family at a BBQ, even with the separate grill, and it's a recurring point of tension. He goes further with the ethics of it than she does, and he makes that very clear. They're going on a 3-week trip to the Mediterranean this summer. The poster has always said to herself, privately, that if she ever did a trip like this, genuinely special, once in a while, she'd eat what she wanted to eat. She wanted the full experience of being somewhere you've always dreamed of going. She was talking to her sister about this plan, not even to her partner directly, and he overheard the conversation. He got very upset, said she was betraying her ethics and betraying the animals she claims to care about. Was she wrong for wanting to eat meat on a special vacation after 8 years of vegetarianism? No. 8 years of consistent personal choice, with no judgment toward anyone else, is a genuine and meaningful commitment. One planned exception over a 3-week trip that she was deciding privately for herself is not a moral collapse. The fact that she cooks meat for others, never preaches, and had this conversation with her sister rather than picking a fight with him about it, makes her approach pretty considerate. Her partner's reaction, calling it a betrayal, yelling about it, says more about his relationship with this topic than it does about her. You can hold personal values and still make individual exceptions for yourself without owing an explanation to anyone. Okay, next one. So, this woman organizes group lunches at work once a week. She's always the one who drives to pick up the food, puts it on her card, and then everyone reimburses her. Most meals run around $15 to $20 per person. Here's the thing. She has a discount that applies at most of the places they order from, about 10% off. She doesn't pass this discount along to her coworkers. She charges them the full price for their individual orders and keeps the difference, which works out to roughly $1 to $2 per person. Some of her co-workers found out she was doing this and said she's been profiting off the team lunches. She says she provides a service, she drives there, she uses her car and her gas. And without her, nobody would be getting takeout since there's nothing walkable nearby. She also points out that they're not paying delivery fees, which would be $5 to $10 each on top of the food cost. Was she wrong for keeping the discount without telling anyone? This is actually interesting. I think the problem isn't keeping the discount, because her argument about the driving and the gas is genuinely valid. She provides a real service. The problem is that she didn't tell anyone. If it's on the table and everyone knows about it, no one has an issue. It's the secrecy that made it feel like something was being hidden. She should have just said from the start, I use a discount, I keep it because I'm the one driving. Most people would have said fine. Next one. This woman and her husband got into an argument about her sometimes forgetting to turn off a stove burner. They had just moved into a new place, and it happened a few times. She says she genuinely understood it was a safety issue and was actively working on being more careful. The fights weren't constant, but it was a recurring point of tension. During one of these arguments, her husband panicked and called his longtime friend Anne, a friend from his school days who both he and the poster have known and socialized with for years. The poster could hear her husband's side of the conversation clearly. She heard him invite Anne to come stay at their apartment while he was traveling for work that week, and ask her to come by and check that everything was properly turned off. At some point during the call, she heard Anne ask, "Is she mentally disturbed? Why does she keep forgetting it?" The poster let that go in the moment, assuming it was just the kind of thing someone says when they're only hearing one side. Later, the poster sat her husband down and said that bringing their private arguments to a third party wasn't okay. He didn't respond well. He got defensive and said that if she hadn't been so irresponsible, he wouldn't have needed to call Anne. And then he said the thing that stuck, that he trusted Anne more than he trusted her. While he was away for the week, he kept asking if she'd reached out to Anne or invited her over. She said she'd do it when she felt better. She'd been sick for most of that week. When she did eventually reach out, Anne canceled last minute. After processing all of this, the poster told her husband that Anne was no longer welcome in their home. He could keep the friendship, he could see her elsewhere, but not in their shared space. Her husband's mother got involved, as she apparently always does. The mother's take was that the poster brought this up at a bad time and should have waited for a calmer moment. And as part of resolving things, the poster was expected to cut off contact with one of her own friends, who had yelled at her husband when he'd been complaining about the poster. Apparently, the friend's defense of the poster was seen as disrespectful, and she should have defended him instead. Was she wrong for banning Anne from the home? No. Her husband publicly stated, during a conflict, that he trusts another woman more than his own wife. That sentence doesn't go away when the argument ends. Layer onto that the fact that Anne made a comment about whether the poster is mentally disturbed, based entirely on a one-sided venting session, and was then invited into their home by one partner, without the other even knowing about it in advance. And then the mother adds that the poster can't talk to her own friend for defending her? The poster has been remarkably measured through all of this. Saying Anne is not welcome in our shared home is about the most reasonable boundary I can think of given everything that happened. All right, this next one has a real twist. So this couple is in the process of building a house together. They make a good income, are careful and conservative with money, and have been working with a builder on detailed plans for a while. The wife is very close with her grandparents on one side of the family. Her grandfather built his own construction company from the ground up, so running their plans by him made complete sense. He'd been genuinely engaged with the process throughout. When interest rates went up significantly, the couple made the difficult decision to scale back a big portion of their original plans. The revised layout was noticeably smaller and simpler than what they'd originally designed. When they sent the grandfather the final revised plans, he noticed the difference immediately. What happened next was completely unexpected. The grandparents offered to give them a portion of what would eventually be their inheritance, now, up front, while they're still alive, so that the couple could build the full original plans, an extremely generous amount. The poster says they've never asked any family member for money before this. He and his wife were genuinely moved. They told the wife's parents about the offer. The parents' reaction was noticeably distant and uncomfortable. The next day, the wife got a message from her mom asking to talk privately. In that conversation, the mom revealed something the poster had never known. She and her husband hadn't planned adequately for retirement. Years of maintaining a certain lifestyle, vacations, keeping up with appearances, various expenses, had left them without meaningful savings and with significant debt. Their plan, which they'd apparently discussed with her grandparents in vague terms at some point, was that their inheritance from the grandparents would be the backbone of their retirement, used to pay off debt and fund their later years, with some portion eventually passed along to their kids. The ask from the wife's mom was clear. Decline the grandparents' offer. Tell them the couple wants to save up and do it on their own timeline. The in-laws implied they would eventually help when they could. When the couple met with the grandparents to decline, the grandfather was puzzled. He pushed back. He said they would receive this money eventually anyway, and he and his wife would rather see the joy of it while they were still around to enjoy it. He pressed the poster directly for a real explanation. In that moment, feeling cornered and not knowing what to say, the poster cracked. He told the grandfather, without going into the full financial details, that the wife's parents had asked them to decline the offer. Shortly after the visit, the wife got a furious call from her mom, asking what had been said to the grandparents. The wife broke down on the phone. Her parents had never spoken to her like that before. The poster has since admitted what he said to the grandfather. The parents haven't spoken to them in weeks. The wife has been distant, and they're in a really difficult place right now. Was the poster wrong for telling the grandfather the truth? This is the most complicated one today. On one hand, the in-laws put the couple in a genuinely unfair position. Turned down a generous, loving offer from your grandparents without a real explanation. That's not a reasonable thing to ask of someone. On the other hand, what the poster said exposed a financial secret that wasn't his to share, with consequences that have now exploded in multiple directions. I think what he did was understandable. He was in a corner, the grandfather was pressing, and he didn't have a clean lie ready. But I also think the fallout was predictable once he said it. What bothers me most here is that the in-laws created this situation. They didn't plan for retirement, they counted on money that wasn't theirs yet, and then they asked their daughter and her husband to be the ones to make the awkward problem disappear. That's an unfair thing to do, and now they're furious that it didn't stay buried. The poster isn't the one I'd point to here. Okay, second to last. So this woman pays extra for a reserved parking spot at her apartment. Parking in the area is terrible, and the spot was worth the cost to her. About 2 weeks ago, her neighbor asked if her boyfriend could use the spot for one night while the poster's car was at the mechanic. She said yes. The car was still there almost a week later. Her car came back from the mechanic. She now has her car and no spot to park it, even though she's paying for it. She reminded the neighbor multiple times. Always an excuse, always a reason the car couldn't move yet. After several reminders, she had it towed. The neighbor says she overreacted and embarrassed them. Was she wrong? No. She agreed to one night. One night became almost a week, despite multiple reminders. She has a reserved spot she pays for. Having a car that's overstayed by 6 days removed without warning after repeated requests is not an overreaction. It's what reserved parking is designed for. The neighbor put herself in this situation by not honoring the agreement she made. Last one. So this woman's son is about to start applying to colleges. By all accounts, he's an exceptional student, near the top of his class, perfect grades, stacked extracurriculars, genuinely impressive application. His dream schools are the expensive elite ones. Here's the issue. The family falls into the strange middle zone of being too well off for meaningful financial aid, but not wealthy enough to just pay for an elite school out of pocket. And this is the oldest of 4 kids they'll need to get through college over the next decade or so. The poster, the dad, has been telling his wife they need to have an honest conversation with their son about what they can realistically afford. He's found schools that would give their son a full scholarship based on his stats. He says they need to lay out exactly what they can cover and make sure the son applies to schools that fit the financial reality. The mom disagrees. She says, let him apply everywhere, figure out the money after. Where there's a will, there's a way. The dad thinks that's irresponsible, given that they have 3 more kids to consider. Also worth mentioning, the son wants to go on to get a PhD or become a veterinarian. He's going to need graduate school on top of this. Was the dad wrong for wanting to be honest about finances before the applications go in? No. Where there's a will, there's a way is a beautiful sentiment that doesn't pay tuition. Having a frank conversation about what the family can realistically afford isn't crushing a dream. It's making sure the dream doesn't start with a financial hole that takes a decade to climb out of. Especially for a kid who wants to do advanced graduate work after. The dad's instinct to look at scholarship options at strong schools is actually the path that gives the son the most flexibility, not the least. All right, that's all the Reddit stories for today. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you enjoyed. More coming soon. See you next time.